Well, good morning. It's good to be with you guys this morning. My name is David Black. I'm the campus pastor here. And if you're new with us or if you're just a guest visiting, I want to say welcome to you. We say often here, and we mean it, that we would rather pursue God together than to pretend to have it all together as people. And so what that really plays out to is that if you are not a follower of Jesus, or if it's been a while since you've been inside a building that people call church, it's our hope and prayer that as we open up this book, that God would meet with you, that he would talk with you, maybe that you'd leave with some people in your corner or community to which you can ask questions. If you are a regular attender of Grace Church as your home, our prayer is also that God would meet you this morning and that he would speak directly to your heart, and that we would collectively not leave here the same as we came in. That's kind of our goal. And so to that end, each week we open up the Bible, because it's more than just words on page. We actually believe it's God's heart on that page. And so we're asking every week, kind of what does this mean for where we're headed in life for today and the future? And so we've been doing that over the last few weeks in a series just entitled Strangely Close. Now, I got to tell you right off the bat, because it's a little overcast and it's rainy. If you're new, and again, you walked in and you're like, what do you mean strangely close? What's this series about? Well, it's about the book of Leviticus. And now maybe you're going, are you kidding me? Like, I barely got here this morning and it's cold and half the people I know are sick with who knows what. And we're going to talk about Leviticus. Good luck, man. Good for you. Go for that, right? And the reason we tend to have that sentiment is because we said, man, Leviticus, sometimes it's weird. Like, a lot of people get lost in Leviticus. They try to read the Bible through the year and they drop it then. There's things in there that are different than the world. It's not like the world that we live in. And then there's stuff in there that when we look at it, we're like, I just don't know what to do with it, so I'm going to leave it alone. Like 1, 2, skip a few. I'm done. I read the Bible. Look at that. Well, what about Leviticus? And so here's what we've said from week 1. We've said this, that Leviticus has a lot that is strange, but it also has a lot about being close to God. And we asked this question: what would it look like for your life if you knew 100% where you stood with God? What would it look like if you didn't have to guess how he felt about you? What would it look like if there was no gray, like this, like where I'm like in the gray between some days it's good, some days it's bad? What would it look like to have that kind of close relationship? And for some of us, we don't have a box for that. Well, the book of Leviticus is that box. And so week 1, we took a look and said, man, this whole thing is about how can God and man come back together. In fact, you'll see in a moment, this whole thing takes place at the base of a mountain called Mount Sinai, where God gave them the 10 Commandments. And God instructed them to build this little mobile tent called the tabernacle or dwelling. And God said, I want you to decorate it like a garden, like the Garden of Eden. And I'm going to come and live in that garden with you. And see what's going on. God's going, I'm going to be in the place where I once was with Adam and Eve, and I'm going to want to invite you in. And God comes down, and from the top of the mountain, right, not come up to the mountain and meet me, God says, I'm coming down to be with you and live in your world. And so he comes down literally, and like the presence of God gets inside that tent, and then we're told something tragic at the beginning. Nobody could go in, not even Moses. So the question was, how do we get in? And last week, we looked at there were these sacrifices that because there was a fracture in a relationship, God said, I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do, what you need to bring. And these are a gift to you. I'm demanding these from you. I am giving these to you so that you might have a way to come back into the garden with me. Cool? Now we pick it up there today, and this is what I'm going to read for you, and it's going to be strange, and it's going to be weird, and you're going to be like, what are we going to do with that? And you're going to want to run away and get in your car and drive home, but this is pretty decent, okay? Again, if you hang with it, there's a payoff. This is chapter 8. The Lord spoke to Moses saying, take Aaron and his sons with him, okay? And the garments and the anointing oil and the bowl of the sin offering and the 2 rams and the basket of unleavened bread. You're like, what is all that? It's been talked about before. You can go back in Exodus and read it. And assemble all the congregation at the entrance of the tent of meeting. That's the tabernacle. And Moses did as the Lord commanded him. And the congregation was assembled at the entrance of the tent of meeting. And Moses said to the congregation, "This is the thing that the Lord has commanded to be done." Okay. And Moses brought Aaron and his sons and washed them with water. And he put the coat on him and tied the sash around his waist and clothed him with the robe and put the ephod on him and tied the skillfully woven band of the ephod around him, binding it to him with the band. And he placed the breastplate on him, and in the breastpiece he put the Urim and Thummim, and set the turban on his head, and on the turban in front he set the gold plate, the holy crown, as the Lord commanded Moses. What is going on? I don't know if you've ever watched the Great British baking show, right? They call it Bake Off in England. But in it, these contestants volunteer to go hang out in a tent, different than this tent, and make cakes and various desserts. And they have different challenges. Well, one of their challenges, it's the second one if you ever watch the show, is the technical challenge. And basically, they're told very little instructions on how to do something. And their goal is to make something quite possibly that they have never made before. I was watching it this season, if you've watched the latest season. Here's the instructions that they got for a lemon meringue pie. Got it? Here's what it looks like. Set the oven to 180 degrees Celsius. In America, I'm already lost, right? Can't even do that one, right? I don't know what that is. I do some calculations in my head. Step one, only step. Make a lemon meringue pie. It's a problem. Could you do that? Maybe if you can, bravo. I'd be like, I'm out. Some contestants hadn't even seen a lemon meringue pie. Like, well, how would I begin to put that together? And how would I begin to have that conversation? And when we tend to think about what it means to be close to God, for many of us, that's the feeling we get. Be close to God. And maybe perhaps you're like, well, could someone help me? Could someone step in who's seen it before or knows what needs to do? Could I get someone who's baked something? Could I get someone from England who knows what 180 degrees Celsius is? Can I get some help? Right? That's what we're talking about today. The help on how to be close to God. So we're going to answer this question. What's with the priest? What's with the priest? Well, the priest, in reality, is that person. He's the help. You say, well, what do you mean? Well, we need someone to show us. We need someone to show us. What we just read in the chapter 8, 1 through 9, Moses took Aaron. Now, last time we saw Aaron was worshiping. Actually, he was building a golden calf to a false version of God. So we're getting that guy. Like, get that guy, keep that in your mind, and we're going to dress him up, and we're going to clothe him. Now it's Halloween, right? It's coming up. We put on costumes to be someone else or to portray something else. That's exactly what's going on here. God said, I want you to create a picture of someone where everything about who they are represents something. I brought a picture along with me of what people thought Aaron might have looked like this dude. So that looks just strange to us, right? You're like, where is that from? That looks like something from like Lord of the Rings or another like throwback. Like, what is going on with all of that stuff? Well, every element of his garment was actually supposed to be a picture teaching someone what it looked like to be close to God. So, for example, in the Garden of Eden, when God made Adam and put him in the garden, he said, hey, I want you to work the garden. And back then, it wasn't difficult. It just went like no problem at all. And so, for example, God said, when Aaron is going to go into this garden that I made, this mini garden, to have a relationship with me, I want him to have a white linen tunic on underneath. Well, why? Because you wouldn't sweat if you wore that. In other words, I want his work to be I want it to be no sweat for him, right? I want it to be like it was back in the day. So every piece of his garment was to picture literally what it looked like to be Adam in the garden in relationship with God perfectly. He wore like some of the most expensive and the most beautiful things they could find. On his hat was written the phrase holy. That means set apart to God, meaning this one's mine. We're going to dress this guy up like this so that people could see it. Remember, the people are watching. They're sitting at the door of the tent. They're watching him get dressed and get clothed with this. They're watching Moses, at the instruction of God, create a person whom he could have a relationship with in the tent. Get that? So Moses, he goes through all the sacrifices that we mentioned earlier last week. You can go back and listen to those. He kills a bull, which would have been $35,000, like taking a brand new truck and he pretty much devotes it all to the Lord. And then he does something odd with it. He says, Moses took some of the blood and he put it on the lobe of Aaron's right ear, and then the thumb of his right hand and his big toe of his right foot. See, it's a strange book, man. Some strange stuff. Why did he do that? Well, he's symbolizing to the people, here is a man who hears only what God says. That's his job. And here is a man who does, right? The hand. I think we have slides for this. The hand, right? And we put it on his toe because here's a man who walks in the way of God, right? That's the picture. Aaron, dressed up like Adam, solely to God, hears him from God, does what God says, walks in his way. Like, whoa, that's impressive, right? They anointed him. Moses took some anointing oil. This would have been like almost like essential oils. Like if you think about essential oils being super concentrated, Moses would anoint him with oil and the blood that was on the altar and sprinkled it on Aaron and his garments and also on his sons and his sons' garments. So he consecrated. That word means to set apart Aaron and his garments and his sons and with his sons' garments with him. In other words, when you took oil like that, it's the first time we've ever seen this happening in the Bible, by the way. It was to symbolize like all the concentratedness of God's place and his dwelling, like his heaven and his kingdom, all of that being poured out like a little drop just put on this guy because he's going to go in the garden. He's going to go back into the door, which, by the way, no one's gone back in since Adam and Eve. We're sending this dude like Neil Armstrong to the moon, right? Like we're putting him in there. That's what we're going to do, right? And, by the way, in case there was any confusion on this, do you know how long this took for Aaron? You know how long this went? 7 days. 7 days. It will take 7 days to ordain you. Why? Because God likes just numbers that are prime? No. Why? Because 7 days, what? Of creation. And so the people would watch Aaron like a fishbowl. They're sitting around, and Aaron and his sons are in the tent day 1, day 2, day 3, and they're eating food that was sacrificed for his cleansing and purification and all that stuff. And they're looking in, and here's these guys inside the outer courts about to go into the inside of the tent. They're hanging out, and we could peer in and be like, that's what it's like to live with God, where you're just enjoying his presence. God didn't want them to do anything for 7 days. They're just eating. They're hanging out and eating and talking and living with God. And we're like, oh yeah, it's like it was in the beginning again, right? And God says, by the way, you need to stay in the tent. Don't come out. How's this for a warning? So that you do not die. Now, does anyone remember any story where someone was created and put in a garden, and after 7 days, God said, you can do whatever you want, just don't eat this one tree or you will die. See it? See it? I got a friend. I don't know if I call him a friend. We've met once. I'm an extrovert. So I got this friend. He's got an Instagram account. And he has a ranch in North Georgia. This is not a plug, okay? So I brought some pictures for you right here of his account. He sells beef. He's a rancher. He just decided he wanted to leave Atlanta, go North Georgia, and start a ranch. By the way, 548,000 followers on TikTok, right? That's impressive, I think. I don't know anything about TikTok, but I think, man, if you can do that with a ranch, good for you. Well, I'm one of his followers on Instagram, and here's what I do. When things get crazy and it's nuts and I'm sitting in traffic, do you know what sometimes I'll do? This is confession time. I'll pull up his Instagram account and I'll watch him with some cows. And it's so peaceful. And he's got his dog, and he's got acres of land, and it's wonderful. And for a minute, you know what I do? I live vicariously through him, right? You do that? You're lying if you don't, right? You got somebody, right? There's some place where you're like, man, if I could be in that place, that's what it would be like. You got some person that you follow where you're like, maybe one day, someday, man, what would it be like to be them? But maybe that's probably never going to happen. I'm never going to be a rancher. This thing that I'm doing right now is as close as I get to ranching, right? Some similarities, but a little bit different, right? But I live vicariously. Do you know what the word vicariously means? Right? In place of. Literally, Aaron and his sons are that for the people. They're watching them and going, that's what it could be like. Man, if I could be that close to God, that's what it would be like. It's fascinating. It's fascinating. Do you know we do that all over today? The world is full of people who are trying to get you to follow them or look at them, or options. It's full of options of individuals that you could look at and be like, that's what it would be like. Remember I said that he was one of the first anointed ones? You know what the word to anoint is in Hebrew? You kind of do already if you don't know it. It's this word right here. One more, click it. Yep, it's mashak. And when you anoint someone, the person you anointed was the Mashiach, or in our words, the Messiah. Do you know that our world is full of messiahs? Full of people who are saying, I can show you. If we're to be honest, many of us spend our life and our time pining after pictures of people that we will never, ever meet and people we would never be like. Why? Because of this one fact. We want a picture of somebody who's got it together. A picture of somebody who knows what it's like. Most of our world's messiahs, they're man-made. And even our man-made ones, you know what, we look at them and we go like, man, that's a pretty perfect house. Man, that picture on Instagram looks pretty perfect. That family looks perfect. That place looks perfect. And God goes, I'm going to create for you one that you can look at. That's what he's doing for the people, who from all intents and purposes, in my book, looks perfect. Because we killed all the animals in this place, and we got them ready for that. Russell Brand, I would not recommend everything he does, but he does have a stand-up routine called Messiah Complex, and in it he says this: I'm glad that I have these heroes that represent values outside of our popular culture, and I urge all of you to choose heroes as well, because if you don't choose heroes, heroes will be chosen for you. What's he saying? He's saying we all have this idea. We want to look to someone. We want to look to a leader. We want to look to a pastor. We want to look to a star. We want to look to somebody who's making something online. We want to look to someone and go, that's the person. That's the one that I would be, because they got it together. And God goes, I got someone for you to look at. And he dresses them up. And he puts them in the garden. And we go, and I could never be like that. That's almost the point. Because we need a priest, because we need someone to show us. We need someone also to go for us. Okay? Next chapter is chapter 9, so we skipped a lot, honestly. You can go back and read it, but honestly, all he did was exactly the instructions that we read from all the sacrifices last week. And so we're told that in chapter 9, on the 8th day, this is day 1 on the job, okay? 7 days are over, he's good to go. On the 8th day, Moses called Aaron and his sons and the elders of Israel, and he said to Aaron, take for yourself a bull calf for a sin offering and a ram for a burnt offering, both without blemish, and offer them before the Lord. And he says, get ready. Why? For today the Lord will appear to you. Whoa. Imagine you woke up and you checked your Outlook calendar and it said first thing on the agenda, the Lord will appear to you. That's a big deal. He said it to the people as well. And so we're told in the next verse, this is what happened. Moses said to Aaron, come to the altar. Come to the altar and sacrifice your sin offering and your burnt offering and make atonement for yourself, BTW, and for the people. And for the people. Sacrifice the offering that is for the people and make atonement for them. Okay, so all the people are still watching. They're watching Aaron, and they're like, you're going to go to the altar. The altar, by the way, which is inside the door in which you've been living, you're going to go into the garden where the first sacrifice was made, and you're going to make a sacrifice, and it's not just going to count for you, it's going to count for all of these guys and ladies too. Now, if you're an Israelite, you're going, man, I hope he did all the stuff, because he's the guy we're sending in there, and he doesn't have a great past, because the last time we sent him somewhere, it was to a false god and idol worship, and that whole thing, that didn't go well. So now he's going to go in, and he's going to offer for you and for me, and he's going to do this. Why? Well, because a priest would do things that you could not do for yourself. We need someone to go for us because he needs to do things that we couldn't do for ourselves. I don't know if you've ever worked on a car or gotten your hands really dirty. Maybe you've painted something and you've had to navigate your home without your hands. You know what I'm talking about? Your hands are dirty and you go to turn on the light and you're like, oh, can't touch the light switch. Hello? Right? Alexa? No, it doesn't work, right? You're like, hey, could someone, right now, they make tap water, like faucets that you can just wave in front of. But before that, when I was growing up, right, if you're got greasy hands, you had to do what? You had to call someone over and say, hey, because otherwise you're doing the tap water thing and it doesn't work. You're like, could you turn on the water? Why? So I could clean my hands. You need someone's hands were first clean so that you could clean yours. Same picture here. We need a guy who's clean to go in because our hands are dirty. And he's got to turn the whole thing on so that we can wash ourselves, because we can't do it. Also, by the way, we're told that Aaron lifted up his hands when he got there and he turned back around and blessed the people, right? You can't bless yourself. You ever done that, right? You sneeze, God bless me. People would be like, you need help, right? Because we don't say that in our culture. So Aaron's doing what people cannot do for themselves. He's offering a sacrifice for them. He's turning back around from God's perspective and blessing them. He's going to do all of that for them. Not only do we need, right, what he needs to do for us, what we can't do for ourselves, but we're also told that he's going to go where we can't go ourselves. He's going to go inside. I brought another picture along of a lady who was an astronaut. She went to the International Space Station. Her name is Shannon Walker. And she's holding something in this picture. Can anyone see what that is? It's a watch. That watch is actually Amelia Earhart's watch. And so what she did, she's standing with another lady. That lady is the president of the 99s. The 99s was the first aviation society started for women who wanted to learn how to fly. And that watch got passed down after Amelia Earhart's disappearance. She gave it away before her final trip. That's why we have it today. And they said, Amelia Earhart, one of the first women to fly planes, inspired all these women to fly, could never go into space. But you know what? Shannon Walker is going to take that watch, and you know where she's going to go? Into space. And in a way, Amelia Earhart, right, kind of made it to space. Same thing with Aaron. On his garment was inscribed every name of every tribe of Israel, all 12. And when he walked into the inner tent, it's like he's taken all the people with him. They couldn't go in there, but we're going to send Aaron in, okay? Now, what happened, right? This never happened before. This is day one on the job, 8th day. Aaron, you're going to go in. And we're told what happened. Okay, read this not in black and white. Read it like it's your culture and your people, because it's like, dude, no one's done this before. And when they came out, they blessed the people, and the glory of the Lord appeared to the people. Okay, so they went in. That's crazy. They went in, and then they came back out. They blessed the people again, and fire came out from before the Lord and consumed the burnt offering. Whoa. And the pieces of fat on the altar. And when all the people saw it, they shouted, and they fell on their faces. Can you imagine that scene? Aaron goes in. Up to this point in time, it's just people doing stuff. We dress them up. We kill the animal. We do the things God said. We do all the things that God gave us. And in your mind, you're not sitting there like, this has got to work, right? You're going, I hope we're doing this right, because we're going to go back into that garden. And all of a sudden, Aaron goes in and he comes out, and fire comes from God and eats the offering. It worked. Now, you're scared to death, but it worked. Right? It consumes the whole thing, and you're going, that guy went in to the garden in closest proximity as anyone has ever been to God since the creation of the world, and lights the altar. It's like the lighting of the Olympic torch. Do you know what that means? The garden is open for business. The door has been opened. That there is someone who now has access to God. That we have done something acceptable to God. And for the first time since Adam and Eve walked out of the garden, people, human beings, can walk back in through the door to be with God. It's incredible. Incredible. Now, why in the world did it work for Aaron? Why did that happen? Well, we're told. Literally, all throughout chapters 8, 9, and 10, we're told this one little phrase over and over again. They did everything as the Lord commanded. In fact, we're told that 12 times. 16 if you count like it going through Moses, which is a lot. And so the pattern is, right? The pattern is God says, do this, the thing happens. God says, do this, the thing happens. God says, do this, the thing happens. Does anyone remember another pattern like that, right? In the beginning, God said, let there be light, and there was light. And he said, let the land bring forth trees, and the land brought forth trees. And Genesis 1, God says it happens, God says it happens, God says it happens, God says it happens. Here's a guy who's doing what God says, and it happens. And suddenly, a sinful people can have a relationship with a holy God because we got ourselves an OG Adam. And he's been cleaned. And now we can go and follow all of that. Do you realize? Here's what this means. For every Israelite, no one ever stood at an altar alone. Ever. Think about that. Fire comes out of the tent, eats the bull and the fat and all of that, and then someone goes, all right, buddy, you're next. Go up to the altar. Wait a minute. Nope. I thought we were going in alphabetical order. My last name starts with Q, right? And if it doesn't, I just changed it because I'm not God, right? How do you feel knowing what you did last week or last night or last summer or the argument that you had with your wife on the way to the tent to watch the guy do the thing and get dressed? What are we going for? I don't know. What do you mean you don't know? I don't know. Well, what did they say? They didn't say anything. They just said, right, the whole deal, right? You get there, and they're like, now you can go to that flaming altar where the fire just came out and ate the thing. I'd be like, can we get someone to go with me? Now, imagine Aaron goes, I'll go with you. Okay. I'll go if you're there, Aaron, because I just saw you go in and come back out. So I'll go to the altar, and you'll be there with me? Yeah, I'll be there with you. Because you know what it's like to be a human being. Yep. You know what it's like to fall and like mess up. You had the idol thing. Yeah, I remember. Let's not bring that back up, right? Yeah, like that, right? You know what that's like. Yeah, I do know what that's like. But you've also been in there, and you've seen what it's like to be close to God. But you're going to be here, right? And you're going to you're going to do the God thing, but you're going to also be like kind of symbolizing all his beauty, and it's right here. And I can have a little bit of piece of that. I can participate in that, and I can partake in like the godness thing if I stand at the altar with you. Yeah. How well of a relationship you think you got to know that priest, right? It's me again. Oh, hey. I need to offer a sacrifice. The usual? Yeah, it's the usual, right? It's like the worst Starbucks thing, right? Like they already know your name. Oh, here comes Zebediah again, right? He knew you. He knew it. You're back again. You're doing the thing again. And you knew him, right? And you're like, I don't know if I'm going today. It's not that guy at the altar. It's the other one. He's not that great. So I don't know. You had a relationship like that. And the Bible says that's a little bit what the picture of the kingdom of God is supposed to be like. That even inside the church, that we might be people who approach the altar with one another. He calls us little priests. Now, maybe you're like, that's my problem. My problem is that I've been to church. And my problem is not that I'm at the altar alone. It's that there's other people there. And I know what they did. Maybe your problem is I've been to other places and I know other pastors. And I've listened to the news. And I'm not sure that we got Aaron. I think we got like his third cousin once removed because it's not great. Right? Maybe some of you are like, I got hurt from that. And at this point in time, maybe I'm going alone. Maybe you had that thought. You just be honest, that's a legitimate thought. Let's be honest, we don't have Aaron, right? But you know what? There were issues even then. You say, what? Yeah, I wish I could say there's a happy ending, but check this out. Now, before we get to the verse, we need somebody who's not like us. We need somebody better than me and you, and even better than Aaron. Now, Nadab and Abihu. Let me just stop for a second. This whole time we've been talking Moses and Aaron, Moses and Aaron, Moses and Aaron. Literally. Now, Nadab and Abihu. Who are these guys? Like, where'd they come from? Well, it tells us in this text right here. The sons of Aaron each took his censer and put fire in it and laid incense on it and offered unauthorized fire, some versions say strange fire, before the Lord, which he had not commanded them. We've just been in a pattern of God said, they did. God said, they did. God said, they did. What happened? The pattern just broke. You guys remember language from the garden of a certain individual who saw that the tree was good for food and that its fruit was pleasing to the eye? And so she, took. Same word, took. So these guys are like, hey, I got an idea. By the way, this is day 1 still, day 8. First day on the job. Numbers of days since accidents at work, right? Crossing out 0. Day 1, his sons go, we're going to do something that we think is just as good, if not better. Right? You just saw a flame come down and eat stuff, man. And you're like, we got it, stand aside. Here we are. They go in. Now, this is crazy. Imagine if you would. Okay, I was trying to think of an example, but imagine if you would that you went trick-or-treating with your granddaughter or your nephew or maybe your kid, and you're out tomorrow night, and you walk up to a house, and you pull out a piece of candy, and it looks like this one right here, Kit Kat. Now, I don't know if you're a Kit Kat person or not. I'm not, but good for you if you are. That's okay, right? And we know that Kit Kat literally is give me a break, right? Break me off a piece of that Kit Kat bar. At least that's what it was when I was growing up. But it says, have a Kit Kat, right? Do that. Great, no problem, not at all. You go to the next house, and your child comes back, and they're holding this, a Cat Caught bar. You'd be like, what? Let me see that. Go up, ding, ding, ding. Hey, what's with the Cat Caught? Oh, I make those in my basement. All right, well, here's the deal. We're gonna let you keep this, right? No, it's good. It's better than the original. I got my own formula. And that other stuff, it's nice. Have you read the news? Tinfoil hat, right? Like a whole deal, right? All that jazz. You'd be like, look, kid's crying because you don't want candy. Look, you don't understand. That's not the right thing, right? Why? Because it's sus, right? I know, I'm 41. It made you real crazy. Yeah, why? Because that's not right. Now, if that's what we do with candy, right? Do you know we do that with God all the time? We're like, God, I put all this stuff together in my basement. It's better than what you were asking for. It's my life and all the good stuff I've done. Here you go. It's yours. God, I know what you said, but I'm gonna be able to. That's fine. I got a better idea. I figured out something else, right? We substitute things for God's word all the time. Substitute his words for what? My words. Substitute his ways for our ways. Substitutes like his thoughts for our thoughts, his goals for my goals, his description of what it's like to live with your neighbor and your family and your wife for mine. And we go, God, it's just as good. Just as good. Have that. Man, nothing's changed. Don't miss the fact that we just got the garden door open. It's been less than 6 hours? 7 hours? We got access to God since the first time in creation like this. And these guys are like, we got it. And they go. And we're told what happens. And it's not good. And fire came out from before the Lord and consumed them. And they died before the Lord. Then Moses said to Aaron, this is what the Lord has said. Among those who are near me, those who come draw near, I will be set apart. I'll be sanctified. And before all the people, I will be glorified. You know what Aaron said in protest to that? Nothing. Nothing. Meaning, he's right. Your son's just died. And you're like, can't say much about that. You're right. By the way, do you know when God talks to us at the end of time, when we stand before him and explain to him what we did and all that stuff, do you know what we're going to say? Nothing. Because he's right. He's God. He knows it all. He sees it all. And guys, there's death in the garden. Again. We just got this place open and now people took and died. We just did the whole thing over again and again and again. And the truth is, we would do the exact same thing if we were there. Because we do it every day of our lives in every way that we can. Some of us do it publicly in ways that we think are really bad culturally. And others of us do it privately and in other ways that we don't think are that bad culturally, but we both do it over and over and over. This is how it is. I don't know if you've noticed, but humanity leaves a wake of death in their rearview mirror, wherever we go. It's all around us, and it's inside of us. And we go, man, I don't care what priest you get. I don't care what pastor you got. I don't care what church you go to. Do you know what you're going to get when you get people? You know this, even if you don't go to church. That's why you don't go to church. If there's people there, you got problems because people make death. That's what happens. Because nobody's perfect. But what if there was a priest who was perfect, huh? What if we could get one of those? And so God comes to earth as a human, like us, but not like us. Hebrews chapter 4 says it this way. He says this about Jesus. For we do not have a high priest who is unable to sympathize with our weaknesses, because he's lived here, but one who in every respect has been tempted as we are. Don't run by this. Yet without sin. Let us then with confidence draw near. There's that word, draw near. To the throne of grace. Guys, it's not a throne of judgment if you come with Christ. It's not a throne of fear if you go not alone. It's a throne of grace, that we may receive mercy and find grace to help in time of need. You still have a priest. It's not me. Thank the Lord. You have a priest because he never dies. And so we watch Jesus live a perfect life. He does everything that the Lord had commanded him to do over and over and over again. He says, I and my Father, we're so connected, we're one. And I do nothing on my own accord. I do only what the Father told me to do. Right? And he walked around, and do you know what was happening in the Garden of Eden the Garden of Gethsemane, another garden, by the way, before he goes to the cross? His disciples who followed him for 3 years said, you're the anointed one, the Messiah, you're the guy. They're asleep. You know what he's doing? He's praying for them because that's what he does. because he's an awesome priest. He prays for us while we're sleeping. That's what he is. And then he goes and he dies on a cross for us as a sacrifice. Now notice, right? He's a son of a father who did everything right, and yet he died. And when he called out to his father was what? Silent. You're like, that's not right. He shouldn't be the one dying. But he did it for you and for me. And he rose to life again. Why? So that he might go stand in the place where we cannot go yet and do for us what we cannot do for ourselves. And so that every single time that we approach God, he looks at God and he doesn't say, give him mercy. He looks at them and God and shows him his own scars and says, justice, it's been paid for. Therefore, you and I get mercy. He's the perfect priest. He knows what it's like to be you. He knows what it's like to be God because he is God. And he's ready and always standing, praying on your behalf, offering himself again and again, pointing to it over and over. I did it. I did it. I did it. I did it. Why? So the door could be open. He calls himself the door. He calls himself the way. Why? Why would we come to God without Christ? And so I just, for a second, if you're here this morning and you've been doing that, stop. Because fire of God is not neutral. It's not. There's no in between. It's all or nothing, good or bad. That's how it works. And maybe even trying to scratch together whatever you think is good. Maybe even trying to put whatever attendance you can together. Maybe you're just trying to point and say, like, I'll try, I'll do harder, I'll do better. But you can't come without Christ. You can't. And if you're a follower of Jesus, do you understand that when you come to God, you come to Christ? You come to a priest. You're never alone. There's not a moment that you bow your head. There's not a word that you say that there's not another person praying with you or standing with you or being at the altar with you. It's Jesus every time. Every time. Every time. You're never alone. There's a hiking trail in Missouri. It's called the Katy Trail. And you can see a lot of people there enjoying their bikes. Isn't that great? Helmets on and everything. It's wonderful. And they'll have fun, and you can check out their website. They've got camping, and they've got like a little park for kids, and they even have paddle boats that you can rent. And it's a great weekend. It's a great Saturday. Now, what you may not know is that this trail was blazed by some pretty famous people. I think I got another picture. It's actually Lewis and Clark. In other words, they were the first to go. These pioneers. And what's interesting is when they actually were going through this, they were having to survive. They weren't on bikes. They weren't going, this is great. They're like, what are we going to eat? And they took step after step after step after step. Other human beings, right, did that to go ahead of us so that we could ride bikes and rent paddle boats. What they called survival, right, we call Saturday. It's great because they took it all. Do you understand that all this stuff we read about, the sacrifices and the priest and going in and all that stuff, Jesus did for us. He went ahead of us perfectly. And what he did in suffering and offering and going ahead of us and purifying himself that he could purify. You know what we call that? Sunday. And every other day after that. Let's go to him. Father, we just, as people, we come to the altar this morning. Not an altar made with human hands or set up by people. But we come to the very presence of God. It's itself. And we do it with confidence, knowing fully that you are standing right there. God, when we approach you because of your Son. God, forgive us for bringing anything else. Forgive us for trying to make our own sacrifices and our own works and our own stuff somehow replace what you've already done for Jesus. Lord, I pray for the person who's here and they've come apart from you their whole life. Would they today stop going alone and turn from that life and come to Christ? Lord, for those of us who are here and we're followers of you and we're going through it, man, we're tempted, we're falling, we're stumbling, we're wrestling with the death that just seems to be all around us in our wake. God, would you remind us again and again this morning that we don't come alone to you? And God, we call out to our priest who's perfect and holy and set apart and acceptable because he is our hope. It's in his name that we come here this morning.